Hey there, welcome to a brand new episode of Muzikxpress. My name is Twan and in this week's vlog you will see my interview with Eelke Kleijn in which he tells the story behind his track Ein Tag Am Strand. But of course you will also hear more about his artist album Oscillations. But before we start with the interview, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and very important, also make sure to click the bell button because then you will get a notification the next time a new vlog is online. Alright, here it is, the story behind Ein Tag Am Strand, my interview with Eelke Kleijn. Enjoy! Eelke Kleijn is a Dutch DJ, producer, composer and label owner. He is a well-known name in the electronic dance music scene for many years already. His productions and remixes get supported by all the big names in the game. But Eelke also produces music for TV series, commercials, movie trailers and animations. For this week's vlog, I sat down with Eelke in his beautiful studio to talk with him about his track Ein Tag Am Strand and the story behind that one. But of course we also spoke about Eelke's artist album Oscillations, his incredible live set for Cercle, plus you will get to hear more about his future plans as well. My first question to Eelke was how old he was when he started to listen to music.
The first that I can remember is probably about 7 years old, was when I got really interested in music and Eurodance in particular.
And what kind of acts did you listen to then?
Things like Headaway, Two Brothers on the Fourth Floor, might be a little bit later than 7 years, but that kind of music that was popular late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. So are you a self-taught musician or did you study music growing up?
No, I'm mostly self-taught, but I did get piano lessons from age 12 onwards. And later I picked up guitar and I sort of taught myself that. But I had piano lessons for about six years, I think.
And did you enjoy the lessons?
Yeah, but I was a little bit lazy, to be honest. So whenever the lessons were always on Friday, and then I'd go home all excited, and then next week, Friday morning, I was like, I should have practiced, probably.
So, around what time did you start with making music yourself?
I was quite late, I think. About 15 years old, 16 years old. I was working at a music store here in Rotterdam called Keyboard Sound. And I was working in the store itself and I could take home the equipment on weekends as long as it was back in the store on Tuesday when they opened. So a lot of times I would bring like a Roland Groovebox or a JP 8000 or something like that home and just started experimenting with little groove patterns and all that.
Oh, that's pretty cool. It was a good deal.
It was a very good deal, yeah.
So do you recall your very first ever release?
Yes, it was two releases actually, both more or less at the same time. One was under my own name, Eelke Kleijn, and it was called 4.5 billion years on Segment Records. And the other one was a trance record, a Seventh Heaven Cloud City on Somatic Sense Records. And that I guess that came out maybe a few weeks after that. Mm-hmm. And I was sort of doing two things at once. So I was pursuing my own sound and I was making trance with a partner at the same time.
Yeah, and that was 2003-ish?
Yes, 2003.
Yeah. So for this interview we're going to talk about Ein Tag Am Strand, which came out in the year 2013. Was there anything that did inspire you when you started to work on the track?
Yes, my plan was to do sort of like a deep dark techno groove. That it was the original project was called something like that, and so I had made this sort of chunky groove, and I was going over some presets trying to find a sound to use. And the funny thing was I was just like with my left hand I was pressing next, and with my right hand I was randomly just pressing notes. And then while I was randomly pressing notes, the melody for Ein Tag Am Strand came out, and I was like, ooh, I thought I had something good, So I stopped right there, and I completely changed the direction of the whole track. And the rest is history, sort of.
Yeah. So can you tell a bit more about the production process of Ein Tag Am Strand?
It was a very long process because it was a little bit of a different record than most of the records I had released up to that point. And so I could hear the direction it should go into, but I found it a hard record to produce, also because in progressive house, which was what I had been doing mostly, you're doing all these little details and little sounds and a lot of atmosphere, and this felt like a record, like the main melody I knew was really good, and I just needed a few elements to enhance that, you know? So it was a lot of time spent just trying an idea, and then the week after deleting it again, and then trying another idea, and so it was lots of trial and error before I finally finished it.
So what kind of equipment did you use for the track?
The main melody came from a VST called, I think it was Minilogue. Yeah, I think it was Minilogue. For sure it was a Moog clone. So of the famous, the famous 3 oscillator Moog.
Yeah, yeah.
And I used that, and I used some guitar plugins like Guitar Rig to sort of distort it a little bit and turn it into a sort of original sound. And then the melody that starts at the start that basically plays the same thing, that's an actual guitar. It's not an actual real guitar. I think it's a sampled guitar from Trilogy, because in 2013 I didn't really know how to play the guitar yet, so I had to make do with what I had. And then most of the rest is just Omnisphere, Native Instruments, lots of plugins from my standard arsenal. Not a lot of hardware in this track at all.
Yeah. So the track came out in 2013, but I believe you started it like 2 years before that.
Yes, I finished the track in 2011. I think I spent about maybe 3 months or so on the production, just going. It's something I do a lot. I will finish a version and then I'll go back a few weeks later, take some stuff out, put some new things in, and this whole process was about 3 months, I think. And then the track was so different from everything that I had released that I just wasn't really sure what to do with it. And I was thinking whether I should put it out under my own name or maybe under an artist alias or something. And a lot of people told me like, no, this will be good, you know, do it under your own name. But it was 2 years before we finally took a step and you know, released it on Spinning.
Yeah. So was it difficult to find a label?
Yes and no. The most difficult part for me was just being happy with the track as it was and saying, okay, this is it, we're gonna release it like this. We thought it had potential, but we were a little bit afraid that we might need to add something like a vocal to the tune in order to make it, you know, more popular, more easy to get on radio. Yeah. So we went looking for a vocalist and also a label, and we found a label in the UK that helped us with a vocal as well, and that eventually turned into the tune Stand Up, which is the vocal version of the track. And after we had that first signing, it was just signed for the UK. Jeroen, my manager, he said, you know what you should do? Just put like a little outtake on SoundCloud, and you know, let's see what it does, you know. And I did that on Friday afternoon, and on Monday morning pretty much every major label in the Netherlands was on the phone, sort of bidding against each other to get the track, you know, for their label. So that it was quite insane, having all these labels interested in it, you know. Yeah,
especially because you said like, you were not sure, like, shall I do it under my own name or not?
Yeah, because it was especially at that time, it was so far from what I had done up to that point, that it took a lot of time before I thought, okay, I'm going to release it under my own name, you know. But eventually, like Spinning assigned it, and that's how that all happened.
Yeah. So is there a story behind the title of the track?
Yes, actually, because the tune is so happy, I wanted to use the Dutch phrase een dag op het strand, or something with strand, which basically means like a day on the beach, you know. But I didn't think it sounded cool enough in Dutch. So then I thought maybe Ein Tag Am Strand, which is German, basically means the same thing, but it has that cool sort of edge. So that's why we went with the German title.
Yeah. So do you remember some of the DJs that did support the track?
Very varied, I think. It was from people like Oliver Weiter and Miss Malera, who were the only ones for that two-year period that had the track and played it everywhere. So it was all the way from them in the underground, all the way to people like Rudimental, and it was supported all over the place. That was quite funny to see.
Must have been good for your name as well.
It helped a lot. It opened a lot of doors, and at the same time, it also led to a period where I wasn't entirely sure what direction I wanted to take, because, like I said, it was a little bit of a different record for me. And you know, when a record has a bit of success, a lot of times the label will ask you to do another one. Yeah. So I did another record, which wasn't exactly like it, but also a little bit more commercial. And very easily it becomes that the second is a little bit less cool and a little bit more commercial. And by the time you're like 2-3 records down the road, all of a sudden you've ventured too far from your core, you know? So eventually the track also led to a period where I just didn't release any music at all and just tried to reinvent my sound and what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So Ein Tag Am Strand here, like in the Netherlands, it got a lot of airplay. It became Dance Smash at Radio 538, and it even made it to the number 9 spot in the Dutch Top 40 chart. Yeah. So did you expect the track would be so successful?
No, I thought it could be special, you know, but I was sort of still looking at the underground, and I had never anticipated it would get into the top 40, let alone the top 10, you know. And in some countries like South Africa, I think it got up to number 2. And I didn't even write the record with that idea in mind, you know. I thought, let's try and finish this as good as I can, and then we'll see where it goes. Yeah. But no, I never expected it to hit the top 40.
Yeah, I think it got signed as well to Ultra.
Yeah, it got signed to Ultra, and I think a few others worldwide that did releases in their territories. Yeah. But I think it was the biggest hit here in the Netherlands and then in South Africa.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So did it help your DJ career as well?
Yes. Yes and no, actually, because it opened doors. For instance, the radio show that I do now on Slam on a weekly basis, those kind of contacts were made in that period. So it definitely opened doors, and also the door to play more in the US and work with Ultra and those kinds of labels. At the same time, when the record was just out, it closed doors as well, because there were festivals that said like, well, if you're gonna release on this or that label, we don't want to have you on the festival because we feel we are more underground. And so yeah, in the end, I'm still really happy that I did it, because you know, after that record, I've also done a lot of underground records again, and it's definitely in the long run, it's helped me open doors more than close, I think.
Yeah. I mean, your name got out to people that probably didn't hear from you before. Yeah. So yeah, speaking of gigs, after a long time of no gigs due to COVID, you did some gigs again already. So how did you enjoy those gigs?
Very good. Like I did a few gigs last year, August and September, which was all very, like we still weren't really sure how bad everything was. So some of those gigs were seated, and then some of them were low capacity, and so that was fun, but at the same time it's a little bit weird because it's not exactly the way it was before. Then I played some gigs this year. In April I went to Mexico for a 3-gig tour. That was a pretty normal tour, like regular gigs, full crowds, and so that felt quite good to have an actual crowd dancing like right in front of you again. And then also the past few weeks, say from June onwards, I've been playing more, and it seems to be getting back to normal most places now.
Finally.
Finally, yes.
So in April this year, you did a live set for Cercle at the Mont Saint-Michel in France during the sunset, which looks incredible. Right now the YouTube video has over 1 million plays, and the numbers are still going up. So the Cercle set was not like a normal DJ set, but you were performing live. Is there anything you can tell about your live shows and of course the set you did for Cercle?
Yeah, of course. So my live show, the first time I played live is around 2013 or 14, and back then I was playing with Ableton and 1 or 2 controllers, and I did that live set a couple of times, maybe 3-4 times, but I felt like I was playing the exact same set every time. I found it hard to improvise in Ableton, and so I wasn't enjoying it too much at that time. So I stopped playing live for a few years, and then about 2-3 years ago I started looking into it again with the knowledge from the years before, and I went with a different setup. So I'm playing live nowadays from 2 Pioneer samplers, where I have an arrangement for every track that I want to play. So for instance, if I'm playing Ein Tag Am Strand live, it's sort of spread out in stems. So I have my kick and my hi-hats, and then some drums grouped together and some melodies. And the live set is set up in such a way that most of the structure of the track is played from one of those samplers. And then the main melody or melodies, I play them live on top on 1 or 2 keyboards. And it feels like I'm having more fun playing like this than I was before, because when I was just playing with the controller, it felt very much like you could be checking your email, you're just focusing on the screen.
It was more limited.
Yes, yeah. And also for the crowd, it's not directly clear what you're doing, because you're just twisting some knobs and they don't really see what's happening. Mm-hmm. So when I started thinking about my current live setup, I always said, okay, if I do this again, I need to be playing at least 1 instrument, So for now it's keys, and hopefully in 2 years or so I can add some guitar to that as well, and make it a proper sort of live experience.
Yeah. So isn't it a hassle to bring all the equipment and everything?
It is, yes. Yeah. I did think it out in such a way that the Pioneers can be rented on location, as can the mixer. Now I'm carrying my own keyboard around in a flight case, but I might actually move to a setup where we can also rent that, and so we can rent most of the equipment on site. But then again, I'm still doing a lot of DJ sets as well. So we try to limit the live sets to like special occasions, like Cercle, for instance. Yeah. And by doing that, it's not a problem to take some gear with me, every now and then. Yeah.
So how did the Cercle set come about? Did they reach out to you, or?
We'd been in touch for a few years, but we needed a nice sort of moment to sort of tie it together, and that moment was the 4th album, Oscillations, that came out. They really liked it at Cercle, and so we started talking again. But it was also, of course, the COVID period. So we were looking at, different dates that would work. And first we were looking at December, but December wasn't possible. So we went to, January, and eventually we ended up at Mont Saint-Michel in March. And it was a really cool experience playing a live set at a location like that, I was very, very well rehearsed for that one. And
just before the interview you told me, because then in France there was still like what's the English word, the avondklok?
The curfew.
Curfew. Oh, yeah, they had like the curfew, so there were like no people on the street, so it looks really cool.
Yeah, because normally Mont Saint-Michel is such a huge attraction that there's thousands of people daily, and there was literally no one, maybe 100 people or so, just walking downstairs because of curfew. They couldn't really go far from their houses, and so it was just some local French people. And then upstairs, the part where we were playing was basically closed off to public, so we had a private Mont Saint-Michel that day.
Yeah, and was it difficult for you to go to France from the Netherlands with all the rules?
And not as difficult as I had thought, so you do a test beforehand and you fill in some paperwork. But neither on the way there or on the way back has anyone asked for anything. I was half expecting maybe border patrols or something, but we haven't seen anything like that.
Nothing, no.
No.
Good. You already mentioned your album, which came out in October 2020, Oscillations, which is your fourth artist album. Did you make the album mostly during COVID time?
About half. We had in January I had a meeting with the Days Like Nights and the Armada crew, and January was just before COVID, you know, when nothing still seemed wrong, and we said, okay, let's do the album for September. And then when COVID happened in March, we were not sure. And I said, well, you know, we got to release something, you know, and maybe people are at home listening to music now. So let's continue with the date in September. Then hopefully at the end of the year, things will start to open up and you have sort of that nice ride off the album into the club scene. And well, that turned out to be a little bit later, you know, just like halfway 2021. But the first months of lockdown, from March until sort of July, I guess I finished about half the album, and the other half was sort of finished before that already.
Yeah, okay. So how long did you work on the album in total then?
Yeah, probably about half a year, maybe a little bit more. It's hard to really put in numbers because my writing process is so that I will work on something, bounce it to audio and put it in a folder, and then the next day or the next days I'm going to work on something else. And I might not revisit that track for like 3 or 4 weeks or sometimes more. And most of the tracks on the album were made in a period that spans about a year and a half. But effectively, it's not that much work, you know? So yeah, I'd say a half a year or so, I guess, yeah.
So do you work quicker now compared to your previous albums?
No, slower.
Slower?
Yeah, I work slower. The older I get and the more music that I've released, the slower my work speed is, I think, because I'm more critical of myself, more critical of the ideas that I produce. And some things that I would have released 10 years ago, I don't find good enough anymore nowadays.
Do you still listen to your old albums sometimes, or?
Sometimes, yes. And it's mixed feelings. Yeah. Like some tracks I think are still amazing. Other tracks I'm like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but that's sort of, it's a part of my whole career, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's also why I work on tracks over such a long period of time, because I've noticed if I don't, and I for instance, I make a track in a week and then I release it, sometimes 3 months later, I feel like it's not good enough anymore. And I like to have everything that I do sort of stand the test of time. Yeah. And the only way to sort of do that is by stretching out your production process over a very long period.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there have been a few tracks released as single already. Are there plans for more single releases?
From the album?
Yeah, from the album.
No, not any more singles from this album, but we do have more remixes from the album coming up. So we have Tim Green coming forward, Renate Cohen, Eli and Fur, Manole Tuff did one, and there's a few others to come up, I think. So those will be released over the next 4 months, I think. Yeah, about 4 or 5 months until the end of the year.
Yeah, okay. So when I was doing research for this interview, I noticed lots of your track titles are actually in Dutch, such as Levensgenieter, Nachtangst, Eenvoud, Rouwdouwer, Rampenstamper, and De Orde van de Nacht. Yeah. Is there a reason you pick Dutch names for your tracks every now and then?
Yes, well, not particularly Dutch, but they're just, all those titles you just mentioned are words that I think are just cool, you know? Mm-hmm. Some words in the Dutch language are just fun. Yeah. And De Orde van de Nacht is a little bit of a play on De Orde van de Dag, of course, which is a Dutch expression. Yeah. And so I've always liked to use names like that, although lately I'm veering more towards English names, because I've been told a lot of times by foreign agents and labels and the like that it's hard to pronounce those names abroad, and it might actually make sure that those tracks don't get onto radio because you know, the announcers have trouble
pronouncing them. Yeah.
Yes, so I'm using more English titles again.
And some of the names are also difficult, like to translate, like Rodauer, Rampenstamper. I have no clue how to translate it like in English.
I wouldn't neither, and that's why I like those words, because they are
fun,
typical Dutch expressions. Yeah, and it's a lot of fun whenever I'm playing, and someone comes up to me and asks in their language for those tracks, it gets very funny pronunciations.
Yeah, I can imagine. So in the past you already did some music for TV series and movie trailers and more. Is that still something you do these days?
Not as much as I would like. I'm still doing it a little bit, but like in 2013 and 14, I was really writing a lot of music that got signed to trailers and such. And nowadays I'm still doing it, but not as much as before. I focused a little bit more on my artist career.
Yeah.
I do see myself picking it up again in the future, and ideally I'm sort of starting work on a 5th album, and ideally I would like to have a little bit of a crossover there with some songs that could also work for syncing, but also for listening and the dance floor sort of. So it is definitely
on the list.
Yeah, it's on the back of my mind.
So do you have some examples of series or trailer stuff that you worked on?
Yeah, I worked on Wrath of the Titans. I worked on the Hunger Games, although that eventually didn't get used in the Hunger Games, but they used it in another movie. I did work on a Ringer, some on CSI. Some things like Xbox commercials, or quite a varied sort of lineup.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that I'm really proud of that unfortunately never made it into the trailer was the Star Wars movie, the new one. A lot of these things are pitches, so you are basically pitching against other people. And I ended second. So if I'd been first, it would have been used for the worldwide Star Wars commercial.
But are you allowed to use it for something else now, or is it?
Well, the problem is because with Star Wars, you are asked to work with their theme. So basically, you can't use it for anything else. But with, for instance, when I worked on something for the Hunger Games, I was working on an original score, and when that didn't get used for the Hunger Games trailer. They picked it up for another movie and they used it for the trailer, and because it's an all original song, it's no issue.
Yeah. So you're in the, how do you call it, like the aftiteling, like at the end of the movie when you see the titles?
No, because it's just they use it for the trailer.
Oh, only for the trailer?
Yes, just for the trailer. So unfortunately, you don't get credit for the titles.
Still cool.
Yeah.
So what are you working on right now?
Mostly ideas. I have these periods where I write a new idea every day, and I try to do it 7 days a week, at least 5, so I want to have 5 ideas a day ready. And then after a 2-month period, I'll go through everything that I've made, and I find it much easier to hear which ones are really good and which ones I should finish. So I think the results of this sort of 2-month period will be a couple of new singles, and probably also the basis for a 5th album.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So what else can we expect from you in the near future?
There's a few things coming up. I have a new track that's been made together with, or no, I have to say, it's a special project by the Jane in Antwerp. What they've done is the Jane is the famous restaurant. Mm-hmm. So they've done recordings of all sounds in the Jane, like cooking sounds and kitchen sounds and all that. And they've asked a few artists to work with those sounds and see if you can make a track with that. So that's what I did. I made a track with that, and most of the drums and then a lot of effects and some melodies even are based off of those sounds. So that's coming up later this year, I think around ADE, but it's not 100% sure yet. Mm-hmm. I did a remix for a classic trance track, Coast to Coast, Home.
Oh, cool.
But it's a very different remix. It's maybe not what you expect, because the thing is, I did a few remixes in the near history of trance records, and I didn't want to do another sort of standard 4 to the floor remix of an old trance tune. So all the drums were like proper drums, and then I played the bass line and I played the guitar and everything. So it's more of a indie track, indie remix, like a breakbeat sort of indie vibe. And that turned out really well. And it's also a bit of an introduction to where I would like to go with my sound in the future, with a little bit more of an analog acoustic feel to it sometimes.
And when is that remix coming out?
I'm not sure yet, to be honest, but probably somewhere in the coming months.
We'll keep an eye on your socials, of course.
Yes.
And the last question, pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes, pizza Hawaii is my favorite.
Good, join the club. All right, well, thank you very much for your time and good luck with everything.
My pleasure, thank you.
All right, that was it, this week's vlog, my interview with Eelke Kleijn and the story behind Ein Tag Am Strand. Eelke, thank you very much for your time, much appreciated. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed the vlog. If you did, make sure to give this video a like, leave a comment in the comment section below, and very important, make sure to subscribe. Also make sure to click the bell button, because then you will get a notification the next time a new vlog is online. Once again, thanks for watching, and until next time, bye bye!